The fastest way to develop trust that I've experienced is with complex reflections. Okay, so we develop trust when we demonstrate listening. So we had a very personal experience where I kind of was talking to your thing, and I was doing complex reflections of your story, and demonstrating understanding. And as a result, we were able to develop trust in a few minutes. So how did that actually work? Somebody made an equation out of trust? Yes, they did, and it's brilliant. So this is, so T equals, let's see if I can zoom in on this a little bit. Here we go. Okay, so trustworthiness. So you said, how do I build trust? How do I accelerate that process? Credibility, reliability, and intimacy. That's what's on the numerator. Anything that makes the numerator get bigger makes the trust go up. So if you put an up arrow here, then what happens to T? If C goes up, what happens to T? It goes up. What happens if self-orientation goes up? It's all about me. I've got a legislative goal. I need you to listen to me. Self-orientation goes up. What happens to trustworthiness? It goes down. Okay, so how did we develop trust? We developed trust in a couple different ways. I decreased my self-orientation because I didn't bring up any of my own story. I only complex reflected back your story. I didn't bring up my own ideas. I wasn't talking about my agenda for what you would be doing. I didn't talk about this at all. Self-orientation went down. So that resulted in trust increasing. Credibility. I had some amount of credibility because Wolfram introduced me. And I have a credential in motivational interviewing. So I had a small amount of credibility. Like, do you know the organization that I was talking about? Probably not. So it's not a ton, it's like a little. Reliability. That usually takes a little bit of time to build up. So there wasn't a lot of that. You don't know if I'm reliable or not. If you did, you'd probably realize that you probably should be text messaging me 15 minutes before meetings, because sometimes I'm not the best with being on time. And intimacy, this is one that goes up a lot. So when we offer a complex reflection, intimacy goes up a great deal. So the trust that you were feeling was a little bit of this, a lot of this, and this going down, which resulted in you feeling trust. Now, if we were to do a series of 4 workshops together, and I showed up on time and I consistently gave you an experience where you felt like you grew stronger in your skillfulness each time, reliability would go up and you'd have greater trust of me. Maybe even enough trust to, let's say, bring my workshops to other people or in your environmental network and saying, you got to meet this guy, he's going to do a training for you for free, and I really trust him because he's reliable and he cares about me, and he really is not self-oriented, he just wants to help us learn MI so that we can be more effective environmental communicators. But we are not there yet, right? We don't have enough trust for you to go out and proselytize, hey, MI for environmentalists. You're not quite there yet. The trust isn't there yet. It's building. So that is how I look at trust. Okay. Yeah, so now in this situation, so sometimes motivational interviewing is referred to as a dance, like we're dancing with somebody, okay? So sometimes we have to be directive, and sometimes we have to just be a little bit more passive. So in a situation like this, we can still be directive without being persuasive. It's a delicate balance, and it definitely takes practice. This is a very, very challenging scenario when you have people who are very extroverted supertalkers. So what I've found, what the rule of thumb that I've tried to use is, um, I jump in when I hear them repeat themselves. So if they're doing a 20-minute monologue, then there will be maybe a few breaths for air, and so I will actually interrupt them once they repeat themselves. So if they're like, well, the reason I'm not going to do something because A, B, C, and then they start to repackage A for you. Okay, so when you start to hear A repackaged, you cut them off, you interrupt them, but you interrupt them by summarizing their point of view. So you're not interrupting. You're interrupting to summarize their point of view so that they no longer feel that they need to actually go down and further explain A all over again. So you're demonstrating that you've listened, and they don't need to do that. So you just cut off and summary. But I mean, like and whenever you do a summary of what they're doing, you're trying to, give them back what they give you, but in the most positive version of themselves, right? So you're trying to view them as an angel. Okay, so like you're talking to the conservative person and they're like, okay, so that makes sense. Of course, you don't want people to lose jobs. You're not a monster. Like, no, who wants that? Of course you don't. And, that really makes sense. You're a good legislator. You care about your constituents. You care about me. And you don't want me to like lose my livelihood. And, I really appreciate that. Thank you. And then let's move on. So then it's people who are like hostile, like troll style resistance that I've ever spoken to or like experienced is one. It was a 15-year-old boy and he destroyed me. Like he actually wrecked me. I was doing a classroom workshop, and he asked a question like, well, why is meat like worse than vegetables? And like I was cognitively impaired, and I missed his tone. He wasn't genuinely asking the question. He was setting a trap for me. So I gave him the answer, the science of it, and then I can't even remember. I think I'm like PTSD'd from it, but he basically just like, it just changed the feel because like I gave him sort of like the scientific thing, and it almost sounded like I was persuading. Maybe I might have been persuading to a certain extent. It certainly came through like that. So then it's like, so you're trying to say like we can't eat meat. And then it's like, and that, like, I measured the impact of all the workshops I did in all the classes that I worked with. And that was the lowest impact that I ever had. It was a lower impact than the first workshop I ever measured when I was wet behind the ears and fresh and didn't know anything. And, it was because I got trapped into persuading somebody. So I've never experienced an adult who was hostile resistant. The only adult that I can actually think about who was genuinely resistant was somebody who was resistant on the basis of religious reasons and thinking that God is doing climate change and that this is like God's will. And so I dealt with that resistance. We're literally talking about 1 in thousands of people. So like if we go in genuine, you will be, I literally expect you to be shocked by how little resistance you get. Just the genuineness alone literally dissolves resistance, like from even being there, because there's no reason to resist. There's nothing to resist against. Like that's the thing is you hear like that, it takes two to tango, like as far as like with a fight, right? Two people have to engage in a fight. So it's like, that's really, I think, the thing. It's sort of like a Sun Tzu sort of thing, like out of war, like, no, I'm not going to engage in that. I am not fighting. And then there's nothing to fight against.